Hello, Bobby Torres of Frightbox Recording here, and let's talk a little bit about mixing heavy guitars and also how to build a tone from absolute scratch. Let's discuss. So by far, one of the most common comments and questions I get on this channel are questions regarding mixing heavy guitars. People seem to have a lot of trouble just finding a good guitar tone at the source and also how to deal with mixing heavy guitars. People will use things like Axe effects or Kempers or spend money on expensive amp sims within their DAWs. And the truth is, all that stuff is great, don't get me wrong, I use those tools as well. But in reality, when it comes to great guitar tone and a great guitar mix, it really doesn't have to be rocket science. As a matter of fact, you can have a killer guitar tone and guitar mix for absolutely free using 100% free tools. And that's exactly what I'm going to prove in this video. I'm going to dial in a tone from scratch, as well as mix the tone with a stock plugin within Reaper, which is a $60 DAW. And to further prove my point once and for all, I want you to achieve the exact same results that I'm achieving in this upcoming tutorial, in this video, by making these exact files available to you for absolutely free. There's a link below in this video's description to the clean DI tracks that I'll be mixing again in this tutorial, and I'll be dialing in this tone with a free amp sim. Today I'll be using the Amped Roots free amp sim by ML Sound Lab. Again, everything I'm using here is 100% free, and I'm gonna be dialing in this tone from scratch as well as mixing the rhythm guitars. And I want you to follow along and mix along with me so you could finally cut through all of the clutter and stop wasting your time in your studio, messing around with overly complicated mixing techniques that really are just hurting your mixes, to be honest with you. So without any further ado, let's dive in and talk about what's included with the download. If you notice here, I have a track, a stereo track called Drums and Bass, and what that is just a submix of the drum performance and the bass performance, as well as the two most important tracks here, the two clean rhythm guitar DIs. As you probably know, if you've been mixing for any length of time, rhythm guitar tone is the most difficult thing to get right. Leads, not as tricky, but meaty yet clear rhythm guitars is where people often have the most trouble, and that's exactly what we're going to be focusing on within this tutorial. And again, you have access to all three of these files in the download. Now, these rhythm guitars were recorded straight into my budget interface, just the guitar plugged into the interface, and the DIs were recorded clean, being monitored through an amp sim. But in the download is just the clean DIs, and I want you to build the tone along with me, again, from absolute scratch. And the plugin I'll be using is a free plugin. Again, the Amped Roots, let's find it here in Reaper, Amped Roots by ML Sound Lab. The Amped Roots, the free version. First, let's hear what the DI sounds like without any plugin engaged at all. Typical clean guitar DI, nothing special. Picked aggressively, played in a tight manner, but again, nothing special. The same stuff that most of us are working with within our home studios. So with that being said, let's dial in the actual tone from scratch. Now, also included in the download is my custom Frightbox IR, which is an IR take-it of my favorite Mesa Boogie cab out of my studio. I prefer to use my own impulse responses because I found that just using the right IR at the source produces the best tone with minimal fuss. It's analogous to just picking the right cab in the real world, picking the right microphone placement, and getting it right at the source. So again, this IR, the same one I'm using in this tutorial, comes with the multi-track download that you can download by clicking the link below in this video's description. And I've also included a link to the free Amped Roots plugin that I'm using, so you can download this plugin as well from the ML Sound Lab website. Okay, so let's hear the guitar tone that we have right now with that IR loaded, and I'll start making some adjustments. So without me touching anything, we already start with a solid guitar tone. Again, for absolutely free, no EQ, no nothing, just a solid impulse response and a great sounding free amp sim. So with that being said, the tone sounds great, but I'm gonna increase the gain slightly. Needs a little more bottom end, maybe cut the mids just a smidge, a little more top end, and a little more presence. And I'm gonna keep the preamp volume where it's at. Let's hear what we have. I'm going for a nice balanced tone. I don't want it to sound overly scooped, but I also don't want it to sound overly low-endy or overly bright. Just a nice solid metal guitar tone. And what we have right now sounds pretty decent, but it needs to be tightened up slightly. So I'm just gonna tighten it up with an overdrive. I'm gonna give it some gain. And most importantly, I'm going to give it some level. Now, if you're not familiar with, pushing the front end of an amp or an amp sim, the idea here by using a boost like this is to tighten up the pick attack and the low end of the amp. I do this for most metal guitar tones or hard rock guitar tones, again, because it kind of actually cleans up the tone. I know that sounds weird, sticking a distortion pedal before the actual natural distortion of the amp. But again, that extra stage of gain does increase clarity by cleaning up the low end. And it's cool. So let's hear how it sounds. And again, this overdrive pedal comes stock with this plugin. This is not something I'm adding. It comes with the free plugin. And as you can hear, it makes a big difference. It makes the pick attack a little more clean. It just adds extra aggression and tightens up the tone. So there you go. I just dialed in a great metal guitar tone in seconds. I did not have to hunt around through a million different impulse responses. I didn't have to try out, 5 different high-end amp sims. I just chose a free solid amp sim with a free solid IR. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm simply gonna copy that amp over to the left guitar, or excuse me, the right guitar. I'm gonna pan them out. So one guitar, hard left, the other guitar, hard right. Please do not overcomplicate guitar mixing by panning your guitars inwards. You're not doing anything to help stereo image. Most pro metal producers hard pan the rhythm guitars to create a wide stereo spread. People seem to freak out about mono compatibility, but even if you flip most pro metal records into mono, the guitars are gonna get lower, so just don't worry about it. It's a non-issue. And let's hear our stereo guitar tone. And now let's blend the guitars in with the rest of the track. Okay, I like what I'm hearing, but we need a little bit of EQ, and I'm just gonna EQ these guitars with the free EQ that comes with Reaper, the stock EQ. Okay, I'm not gonna overthink this. I'm gonna get rid of low stuff that we don't need, so all frequencies below using a high pass filter. So I'm not gonna overthink this. I'm just gonna roll off all frequencies below around 90 Hertz, and I'm gonna roll off all frequencies above 10K with a low pass filter. All right, the slope is a little steep here, so I'm gonna allow some more of those high frequencies in. So what I'm doing here, just to be ultra clear, is eliminating the low end that we don't need, where the kick and bass should be living, and I'm removing the fizz in the top end where our cymbals will be living. And the slopes were naturally pretty gradual in this EQ, allowing some extra top and some extra bottom that I don't want. So I'm just making the slopes a little more sharp. So again, here we are 90 Hertz. I don't want to get rid of too much low end, so I'm gonna adjust the slope itself. Very subtle, but it's cleaning up the extreme ends of the spectrum that I don't need. Also, the low mids are a little boxy, so I'm gonna pull some of that out. And again, because I started with a solid tone, these guitars don't need a whole lot of EQ. This is just that final 10 to 15% to help it sit in with the track. And let's hear what we have. So there you have it. These guitars are mixed. That's all there is to it. No fancy stereo wideners. I didn't have to go in there hunting for problem frequencies. I just chose a solid guitar tone, at the source that I did with free tools, a free amp sim and a free IR. And I'm using just the stock EQ in Reaper. And I have a great guitar tone and a great guitar mix that could be used on any pro level record. And just to go into a little more detail here, if we look at my EQs, I'm just pulling out a few dB, actually 1 dB at 415 hertz, as well as about a dB and a half at 800 hertz, just to clear up the lower mids. And that's on the left guitar. And I did this completely by feel. I did not think about numbers. I did not go hunting around again for problem frequencies. All I did is just use my gut and do it instinctually by listening to the track along with it. And the right guitar is very similar, almost exactly the same. The key takeaway here when it comes to EQ is to just get rid of the extra low end you don't need and get rid of the extra top end you don't need, especially if you're starting with a solid guitar tone at the source. So again, download these files, download the free amp sim, and mix the guitars just like I did in this tutorial, and you'll end up with the exact same result, which you could then duplicate within your own music and within your own mixes. No more overcomplicating the guitar mixing process. It's completely unnecessary. So again, click the link below and you can have direct access to these files, and please send me your mix of the track. I'd love to hear it. So let me know, is guitar mixing something that you struggle with, or do you find it to be pretty easy? Let me know by leaving a comment in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your opinion. If you found this video helpful, like, comment, subscribe, and share. And do not forget to click the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I upload weekly videos on all things metal and rock production. If you're interested in some Frightbox swag, we've got t-shirts, mugs, and a ton of other cool stuff on the way. There's a link below to the Frightbox merch store in this video's description. And again, download these multi-tracks and impulse response. There's a link below in this video's description, and mix along with this tutorial. And until next time, happy mixing.